Hello everyone. Welcome to this session on the transformation of Kubernetes into a universal control plane. My name is Janaki Ram. I'm a CNCF ambassador based out of Hyderabad. I'm a Kubernetes enthusiast. I hope you are having a great time at Kubernetes Community Day, Bangalore. So let's get started. I have a pretty interesting set of items in the agenda. I'm going to start off with the evolution and the background of control planes, followed by a closer look at Kubernetes control plane, and then extending the Kubernetes control plane to transform that into a universal control plane. Towards the end of this session, I'm going to leave you with some examples and evidences from the ecosystem where Kubernetes is orchestrating resources that go way beyond containers and pods. So let's get started. Control planes are not really new. If you look at the operating system, it is actually acting as a control plane, particularly the kernel. It is orchestrating the processes and threads and making sure that they are optimally utilizing the underlying CPU. Back in the days of J2E app servers, we had EJBs that were orchestrated by the app server and placed in one of the application server instances. The unit of job was basically a EJB, and the runtime was, of course, the JVM. And virtualization is all about orchestration. Whether we do it in the data center or in the cloud, we have a hypervisor, and then there is a virtual machine manager doing this in terms of the scheduling and the control mechanism of virtual machines, basically the lifecycle management of virtual machines. Hadoop does the same thing with MapReduce jobs running in Hadoop cluster on a set of slave nodes. Then more recently, we have seen how platform as a service implementations like Cloud Foundry ran microservices and service components in isolated units called Garden, and there is a lot of orchestration that went into it. And of course, Mesosphere and Kubernetes are the modern examples of control planes and orchestration tools where we are now dealing with containers packaged as pods and using a variety of a resource mapping to available set of resources. So that is how we are evolved control planes over a period of time. Now, what essentially makes a control plane unique, and what are the building blocks of a control plane? Well, there is a scheduler. Now, this is the crux of any control plane. The responsibility of a scheduler is to take a resource and place it in an execution environment that is the most optimal and most ideal for that specific job. Now, this could be placing a machine learning model in a GPU, or taking a pod and placing that in one of the worker nodes. It could be placing a virtual machine in the right set of hosts. So basically accepting the constraints, the resource requirements, and the available resources, and making sure that a resource is optimally mapped to one of the available environments, execution environments, is scheduling. Now, in terms of Kubernetes, we have a very powerful scheduler, and that works in tandem with the definitions of taints and tolerations, node affinity, pod affinity, and various other constraints that actually help us take the advantage of Kubernetes orchestration. Now, once we have the scheduler in place, then we have a controller. So the controller is essentially responsible for reconciling the state. So when we are scheduling a resource, we are basically defining its desired state. We might say at least 2 instances of this resource should run all the time. Now, that is a desired state of configuration. During the runtime, during the execution, one of the instances might get terminated. Now, the job of a controller is to watch for these events and then see if it is drifting away from the desired state of configuration and bring them into the desired state. So a controller is constantly monitoring and watching the resources after they are scheduled by the scheduler to ensure they are actually maintaining the desired state of configuration. Now, obviously, when we are talking about the desired state of configuration, we need to store the state somewhere. What is expected and what is the current state. Now, that goes into a single source of truth, and that is acting as the persistence layer for the desired state configuration and the current state. So These are the essential building blocks of a control plane. Scheduler mapping the resources to the execution environments, controller monitoring and reconciling the state, and the state itself, which is acting as the persistence layer and acting as a single source of truth. Now let's go ahead and map this to Kubernetes. Well, if you are new to Kubernetes, this is one slide that depicts the entire architecture of Kubernetes. So on the control plane, we have API server, which is the front and center, which is responsible for taking the requests from tools like kubectl or the client libraries, and then deal with the scheduler to basically place the container or the pod in one of the worker nodes. And then there's a controller manager, which is responsible for making sure that the deployments, the stateful sets, the jobs, all of them are maintaining the expected state. Then we have components like kubeproxy and kubedns, which are responsible for routing and managing the services and the requests. Of course, Cloud Controller Manager is responsible for negotiating with the underlying cloud infrastructure. For example, when an autoscale event is triggered, it is calling the cloud API to add additional nodes, or when we are exposing a load balancer type service, it is provisioning a load balancer and dealing with the underlying block storage volumes, all of that. On the worker node or the node side, we have obviously kubelet, which is interfacing with the container runtime, and there's a kubeproxy responsible for routing and handling the network. So this is the big picture of Kubernetes, but the core components that help us transform Kubernetes into a universal control plane are essentially these. So scheduler, actually we can extend scheduler to do a variety of things, not just placing the pods on the nodes. Controller manager can go beyond the standard controllers like deployments and stateful sets. It can actually reconcile state for other objects, other resources as well. And then of course, HD is the state layer, the persistence layer responsible for maintaining the state, which is accessible only through the API server. So kubectl and every client talks to the API server, and API server provides access to HD. So this is the big picture. Now those blocks that are highlighted in red are the most crucial for us to expand the functionality of Kubernetes into an extensible control plane. So let's understand this a little better. Now, when we are extending the Kubernetes control plane, we are going to deal with three aspects. And the first one is called the custom resource definition. Now, let's say we want to orchestrate database instances. So we want to deploy a database and treat it like a native Kubernetes object, like pods. So a database has a definition. For example, what is the plural, databases, which will help us in doing kubectl get databases. The singular of that is database. And then there is a schema that goes into this definition. For example, what is the storage that is required? And if you are supporting even backup and restore, defining that as a schema. If you are defining backup, you also need to define the periodicity or the frequency at which you are going to take the backup. So you basically define this as a schema. Now that is what is a CRD. So a CRD is like a class. It just defines the attributes, it just defines the schema, but that in itself doesn't do much. Then we translate a custom resource definition into a custom resource. Now this is also pretty straightforward. For example, with just 2 YAML files, we can create a CRD called databases and then a custom resource called database. And we can very quickly use kubectl to create a database and to get the database and perform simple CRUD operations. That is pretty straightforward. But we don't want to treat Kubernetes as a database, right? We don't want to create tables and create multiple rows and treat it like a extensible database. That is not the idea. So we really want to add some functionality to this CRD and CRM, and also make sure that the state is maintained. So that is where we can create a custom controller. So the custom controller is where we actually bring the custom resource into life. So this is where we actually bring the capabilities of a controller. For example, if you are deploying a HA database and it has to run 3 instances all the time, the custom controller will take that as a part of the definition and will monitor your custom resource on how many of them are being run. So whenever one of the database instances gets terminated, the custom controller immediately brings up another and then ensures that the number of resources are always maintained as per the design configuration. So this is the job of a custom controller. So the custom controller actually brings the same concept of deployments and stateful sets that we are familiar with to custom resources. Now, interestingly, a custom resource is a wrapper on top of existing Kubernetes resources like pods, config maps, even deployments, stateful sets, and so on. So you are creating an abstraction on top of them to add meaningful custom resources. For example, a database might be a pod. When you actually do kubectl get database, you are actually seeing a pod. But that pod is not a plain vanilla Kubernetes pod, but it is wrapped as a custom resource, wrapped inside a custom resource, which we call as database. And the job of custom controller is to manage the life cycle of this entire database deployment, like maintaining HA and making sure that the desired state is always maintained. Now, running this is in itself very powerful. For example, you can take any custom resource, including virtual machines. Imagine doing kubectl VMs, and then you have a kubectl get VM and kubectl exec VM. So you can do all of that with just the combination of CRD, custom resource, and a custom controller. But in a lot of scenarios, we have to go beyond the combination of these extensions. For example, since we're talking about databases, what if I want to support an operation which will create a cron job, take the backup of the database every 6 hours, and put it in an Amazon S3 bucket? So now we are actually going beyond the realm of Kubernetes. Now we are dealing with an external resource like an Amazon S3 bucket. So we have to now go a step above just writing a custom controller, but going beyond that to manage the internal resources and even manage external resources. Now, if you look at the extensibility architecture here, now this is an oversimplification, but I hope this gives you a good idea of how to do this. So at the bottom, we have etcd, which is persisting our custom resource definitions and the current custom resources that are running. So custom resource indirectly maps to Kubernetes resources. For example, a database is just a wrapper on top of pod in our scenario. There is Kubernetes scheduler responsible for scheduling pods. It doesn't matter whether it is wrapped inside a custom resource or it is a plain vanilla pod. And then we have the controller, again, responsible for deployment, stateful sets, and so on. So on top of that, we write custom resources and custom controller. Now, we need to go beyond this. For example, when we are storing the backup in an S3 bucket, first we have to create a cron job. And that cron job has to be written outside of the custom controller. So we have to write a cron job that is going to kick in every 6 hours and then take a backup. Now we are managing internal resources. So basically we are doing it at the database level. For example, flush the in-memory data to the disk and then initiate a backup. And while the backup is going on, don't accept any connections. So you're performing certain logic. So that is managing internal resources. Once the database dump is taken, you are managing external resources because you have to now write that to an Amazon S3 bucket. So that is the external resource. So what I want to demonstrate here is the ability of taking Kubernetes implicit intrinsic resources, expanding them through custom resources, and adding external logic to maintain both the internal resources and manage external resources. And the beauty is all of them are exposed via the same Kubernetes API server and the kubectl command. Now, what do you call this business logic or the operational logic or the logistics that are actually required to manage the internal and external resources? Well, that is the operator pattern. So an operator expands the custom controller and custom resources concept by bringing in additional functionality that would have been performed by an administrator, a DevOps, or an SRE, like taking a backup. And it is capable of negotiating with the external resources like cloud providers, object storage buckets, and so on. And the business logic is now moving into operator, and operator is becoming the most critical aspect of the extensible control plane architecture of Kubernetes. So this is how Kubernetes is transforming into a universal control plane. I want to take an example of Crossplane, which is a very well-known control plane for managing a variety of resources, mostly public cloud managed services. So imagine you want to orchestrate PostgreSQL running in Google Cloud, the Cloud SQL instance, and you want to do that from a Minikube running on your desktop or your laptop. So we use Crossplane to basically achieve this goal. So on a plain vanilla Minikube installation, you will deploy the Crossplane operator. So the Crossplane operator is now becoming the control plane. And then you register the Google Cloud package. Now, this process involves associating the credentials required for Crossplane to negotiate with Google Cloud to manage the life cycle of resources. Now, this happens in its own namespace. And then in your namespace, like default, you actually claim a Cloud SQL and create an instance and deal with kubectl commands like kubectl get PostgreSQL, kubectl exec PostgreSQL, and you can do a lot of things with that. So this is an example of how Crossplane is turning Kubernetes into a control plane. Now let's see this in a step-by-step form. Obviously, I don't have enough time to do a demo, but I captured enough screenshots to convey this point. So in my Minikube, I have gone ahead and installed Crossplane in its own namespace. Now, if you see, there are 3 pods that are running. One is 3 deployments. One is Crossplane, which is the operator, then the Crossplane GCP provider, that is the package, and then there's an RBAC manager responsible for basic authorization requests. So this is the installation of Crossplane. You can do it with Helm chart, you can do it with a set of YAML files, it doesn't matter. Now, after this is done, we need to associate Crossplane with Google Cloud. So there, we go ahead and create an IAM role, a service account basically, and generate a service account JSON file as the key and create a secret. And that secret is a part of the Crossplane system namespace. And this is the link between the project that we have in our Google Cloud subscription and Crossplane. So this screenshot that you see here, the YAML, the set of lines that I have written in this YAML file is basically associating Crossplane with Google Cloud through the service account that we just created. So once we have the service account available as a secret, now Crossplane can start talking to Google Cloud. Then I'm going to create a PostgreSQL instance. So I call it as gcloud SQL, and mind you, this is running in the default namespace, in my own namespace. That means every user, every team can create their own set of Google Cloud services in their own namespace. And we give things like what is the storage size in GB. So we give that as 20. And then we are asking the operator to write the connection string into a secret called dbcon. Now, in a few minutes after you run this kubectl apply command with this YAML file, it's going to create a PostgreSQL instance, a Google Cloud SQL instance in the cloud, grab the credentials, the endpoint, and the port into the connection string and make it available to you. Now, when you actually do a kubectl describe secret, it has everything that you need to connect to the PostgreSQL instance. So it has the FQDN of Cloud SQL, which is the DNS name, and then it has the port, the username, and password. Now, you can use any client to quickly talk to the PostgreSQL instance. The beauty is the client doesn't know that it has been provisioned by Kubernetes. The service, which is Cloud SQL instance, doesn't know it has been managed by Kubernetes, but we are taking control of these non-Kubernetes resources from a Kubernetes cluster. Now, this opens up a lot of doors, a lot of opportunities for us to put Kubernetes right in the front and center of resource orchestration and resource management. Now, that's not all. I want to give you some examples from the ecosystem. Public cloud operators, these are the most obvious ones to actually orchestrate, because they have managed resources, they have managed services, all of them have their own orchestration tools, and it's easy for us to bridge that with Kubernetes. So Google was one of the first to announce Google Cloud Config Connector. Now it's a Kubernetes native way of dealing with Google Cloud managed services. You can create a variety of Google Cloud services, from a cloud storage bucket to Cloud SQL to BigQuery database to almost everything. So think of it like a Terraform alternative. So if you can use Terraform, you can also use config connector YAML file. You can version control, you can put that in GitHub, you can take control of it. Now the same thing is available with Azure. It's called Azure Service Operator. Now AWS has AWS controllers for Kubernetes. Now all of them follow the same principle of turning Kubernetes into a control plane for orchestrating these cloud resources. Virtual machines, it's a low-hanging fruit, obvious choice to bring them into the Kubernetes fold. So OpenShift virtualization is one of the classic examples. So Red Hat has invested in this open source project called KubeVirt. And with KubeVirt and OpenShift, you can basically make virtual machines first-class citizens in the container world, in the Kubernetes world. So you can now mix and match VMs and pods. You can treat virtual machines like pods. They show up in kubectl interface in the dashboard. And it's a very powerful mechanism to deal with virtual machines within the context of Kubernetes. Then, of course, VMware has embedded and baked Kubernetes right inside vSphere, and that led to the Tanzu project and the vSphere, the most recent version of vSphere. So you can actually use kubectl or you can use vCenter to manage the lifecycle of VM. So VMware has invested in VM Operator for Kubernetes, which is a pretty powerful mechanism of dealing with vSphere-based VMs. And then Mirantis has put the entire OpenStack on top of Kubernetes. And the most recent project from Rancher, which is Harvest, attempts to do the same thing. It is a hyper-converged infrastructure architecture that brings both virtual machines and pods and lets you treat all of them as one unit of compute, which is pretty cool. Then, of course, IoT and Edge. This makes a lot of sense because IoT is all about scale. We have millions of sensors deployed, we have a lot of actuators, and then there are tens of thousands of edge locations. So if you treat every edge location like a node and every IoT sensor like a pod, it all comes together. So that's what Microsoft has done with their virtual kubelet project and the IoT edge deployments for Kubernetes. So you can basically bridge the gap between the IoT and edge world with Kubernetes through the virtual kubelet or the native way of running the Azure IoT Edge runtime within Kubernetes. Virtual kubelet goes beyond that. You can actually do that for a variety of other scenarios. For example, Microsoft has built a bridge to Azure Container Instances, and there is an implementation of Fargate for virtual kubelet. So you can basically expand the fleet of your worker nodes to have additional nodes that are virtual. And inside that, there's a kubelet equivalent talking to the resource directly. So when you do kubelet get nodes, you actually don't have a node, but it shows up as a virtual node, which is mimicking the functionality of kubelet, which is pretty cool. KubeEdge is another project that again bridges the gap between Kubernetes cloud native world with edge computing. It was originally started at Huawei and then eventually became a CNCF project. Virtual kubelet is also a CNCF project. Databases, again, obvious choice. So the Vitess operator is a very classic example of what you can do with databases running as custom resources within Kubernetes. So there is an implementation of this, the commercial implementation called PlanetScale DB, and they heavily rely on this operator to orchestrate database instances within Kubernetes. DataStax has built Cassandra as a service operator. It does a lot of DBA level operations while running Cassandra inside Kubernetes. And then Couchbase has an autonomous operator which will let you completely control, or rather leave the control to Kubernetes when you're running Couchbase. So you can actually create the operator and define clusters and even define databases all from YAML and kubectl without ever dealing with the CRUD operations or the command line tools of creating databases and even creating the low level database objects. So all of that is possible again with operators and the universal control plane concept. Of course, machine learning, this is all about distributed training and distributed jobs. So that makes a lot of sense. So Kubeflow is another example which leverages Kubernetes. It's a machine learning platform built on top of Kubernetes, uses a lot of operators and control plane capabilities for running notebook servers, which are again custom resource definitions and custom resources. You can also create distributed TensorFlow jobs, PyTorch jobs. You can deploy models through KF serving at scale. Pretty powerful, one of the best implementations of a platform on top of Kubernetes, leveraging the extensibility and the operator framework. Amazon SageMaker operators for Kubernetes is again a concept where SageMaker MLOps comes into Kubernetes, and you can declaratively manage all of this with kubectl and mixing and matching your traditional DevOps with MLOps. And Azure Databricks operator for Kubernetes attempts almost something very similar. So these are some of the examples. These are just scratching the surface. There are many other examples, but these are some of the prominent and most obvious ones. So the road ahead, it's obvious. Kubernetes is becoming the front and center of infrastructure as code. With GitOps, which I didn't touch upon, it's out of the scope of this presentation, but the combination of operators and GitOps, it is a killer combination. It's going to bring a lot of automation, a lot of power to DevOps, SREs, and the modern infrastructure management. So Kubernetes is going to take over provisioning, scheduling, and managing resources, not just pods and containers, but anything and everything from sensors to actuators to machine learning jobs to database instances, whatnot. So Kubernetes API becomes the preferred way for resource orchestration. Again, we are exposing the API through Kubernetes API. It's a lot of piggybacking that is taking place on etcd, which is acting as the database, custom resource definitions, custom resources, custom controllers, and then the operator, all of them exposed through one API. Developing CRDs, controllers, and operators, that's going to become easy with a lot of new frameworks that are coming up. Kubectl turns into a Swiss Army knife. This is really powerful. On one side, we have extensibility in the form of operators and custom controllers. On the other side, kubectl has a lot of extensions. So a combination of this turns kubectl into a Swiss Army knife. You can do a lot of stuff just with kubectl. You know, if you give me one kubectl and a running Kubernetes cluster with the credentials, I can basically turn that into my remote control and manage cloud, manage edge, manage IoT, manage machine learning, all of that. So this is becoming our unified remote control for pretty much orchestrating, managing the life cycle of resources. So that brings us to the end of this session. I thoroughly enjoyed preparing and presenting this session to you. I hope you found it useful. So at this point, we are in the middle of this conference, and I want to thank the organizers for scheduling the sessions, orchestrating the speakers, and managing a variety of resources to pull off this event all virtually. This is not easy. So kudos to them. And I really appreciate the effort of Kubernetes community in India. So have a great conference ahead. Thanks again for joining my session. Thank you.